Fresh sourdough bread is a beautiful thing. And to bake it at home, you start with this, an easy-to-make but not so pretty sourdough starter. Here's how to make a sourdough starter from scratch. The tangy flavor of sourdough comes from natural fermentation. Good bacteria and yeast will grow in your starter over time, and eventually you'll be ready to bake. To get set up, gather a few kitchen basics: a big bowl, mixing spoon, measuring cups, and 2 glass wide-mouthed jars with lids. Surprisingly, you only need 3 ingredients: whole grain flour, all-purpose flour, and filtered water. Filtered water is important because additives in tap water can make it hard for yeast and bacteria to grow. First, measure and mix together 4 cups whole grain flour and 4 cups all-purpose flour in a large bowl or storage container. Next, measure out 1 cup of the mixed flour and pour it into a large mixing bowl. Add 3/4 cup water and mix well. Spoon the wet mixture into a clean jar and cover. A quart-sized canning jar works well. That's your starter. Mark the level of the starter on the jar. Place the jar in a moderately warm room. Within 1 to 3 days, your starter should be actively bubbling and rising. Now it's time to feed it. Remove 1/3 cup of your starter from that jar and transfer it to a clean jar. Mix 2/3 cup of the dry flour mixture and 1/3 cup water into the starter. Cover it, mark the new level, and let it sit for another 24 hours. You can discard the contents of the original jar. You'll continue feeding your starter just like before, every 24 hours until it's mature. This usually takes 7 to 10 days. Between feedings, give it a stir for a few seconds to aerate the culture. When your starter is rising and falling predictably, and at least doubling in size after each feeding, it is mature and ready for baking. Give it a sniff. It should have a slightly sour but pleasant aroma. Until you're ready to bake, store the starter in the fridge. It will keep indefinitely with simple weekly maintenance. Feed your starter as usual and loosely cover it. Let it ripen at room temperature for about 8 hours, then put it back in the fridge. If you feed it once a week like this, it'll just keep going. When you're ready to bake bread, find one of the many good sourdough recipes online. And make sure you plan ahead. The night before baking, remove 1/3 cup of the starter and feed it like before. Then let it sit at room temperature overnight. In the morning, it will be bubbly and ready to use in your recipe. Enjoy the satisfaction of slicing into bread you made from scratch. Your sourdough will have a delicious, tangy taste. You can also save the starter that's discarded from each feeding and use it in non-bread recipes like pancakes, crackers, and pretzels. Or give it to a friend and they'll have a ready-made starter. Happy baking! For more tips for your home, go to aarp.org/home-family.